Welcome to the podcast Stuck in the Middle, a podcast that dwells on the subject of psychology. My name is Palan, and today we discuss the subject, the psychology of aspiration. And to do this, we have two outstanding panelists with us. One, Gautami Tadimalla, one of India's most accomplished actors and a TEDx speaker. And two, Miss Karen Ong, a trainer, and a master coach. So I just want to go straight into the subject. So maybe we'll just go first to Ms. Gautami Tadimalla. How stressful is the continued aspiration towards success? Because sometimes we define success as a journey, not a destination. But in the hyper competitive world, it's often seen as a destination. So, your thoughts?
First of all, Dr. Palan, thank you so much for having me. And it's always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
And I really like this subject. I really like the question you've asked me because the pressure of fighting for success, working towards success, aspiring for success, constantly keeping it in your sights, either near sight or far sight, it can take a huge toll on the person if they are not able to keep the rest of their life in balance. The pursuit of success can become so overwhelming to the exclusion of everything else that it can consume and subsume all the other elements of your life, personal life, your pleasures in life, the art, the creativity, the joy, all of that can go. Ironically, I say even the art and the creativity can go, even if you're in a creative field like filmmaking. So, for example, if I'm a filmmaker and I'm so completely fixated on a certain kind of success, a certain vision of success, such a big film, so much of revenue that I have to make, or such a big hit, or so many reviews I have to get. So, whatever my target is, if I get so consumed by that, at some point I am going to pay the price with losing the joy of actually creating.
Sure.
And
But then failure is very expensive, and failure throws you off balance, doesn't it?
a wonderful thing that I have learned in life is actually, contrary to belief, the one inevitable thing in life is failure. It's not change. Failure is the inevitable thing. So I learned this lesson, through many curveballs that life threw at me, and but I think it's a very good lesson that I've learned. Failure is going to happen. It's inevitable. To sound a bit cliched, sun rises and it sets. That is going to happen. So, like you succeed, you are going to fail also. So, I think it is a smart thing to calibrate failure into your plan.
Right.
So you can never continuously, constantly plan for success all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know maybe just moving to Karen. Karen, you do a lot of coaching, and of course, it's always about success, success, success. But do you think that people do know what success is,
Okay,
or how do they define success for
okay.
themselves?
I think I'll start off how I got into coaching, my journey in coaching. This was way back, I think about 11 years ago. And I was very intrigued by, the very successful leaders like people like Bill Gates, people like Jeff Bezos, and also Steve Jobs, people write about their leadership styles and how successful. So they're icons. So I actually did some reading and found out they all had their own journeys. Everyone had their own unique journeys. However, they had one thing in common. One thing in common is that they all had a coach. And it so happened they all shared the same coach by the name of Bill Chapman or something like that. Yeah. So he was from the Silicon Valley. And that was the common thread that they all had. And I was very intrigued by that. And because of that, I said, I'm in the business of learning development. So I then went, out of curiosity, I decided to sign up to attend a course at one of Kuala Lumpur's major coaching schools.
Michael Chia.
Yeah, Michael Hia. So this has been like 11 years now. And I've had many experiences coaching people. But another thing I like to say that influenced my thoughts on this as well is a very famous book that was given to me by my colleague in Mumbai called The Art of Possibility.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this book really changed me totally, because I think in the book we all know that, everybody, according to Benjamin and Rosamond Zander, they said that every individual is really a rock, like rough diamond. And our role as a coach, is to make sure we polish it until they become the best versions of themselves, right? So that got me into coaching. And in an answer to your question, yes, I think success is always on the lips of, the coaches. I want to be successful. I want to achieve my goals. I want to achieve my ambition. But it's a long journey. It's a long journey. It's never easy. And I agree with what you said that, failure is actually more than change. You're right. I totally agree with you, because in coaching, we look at failure as a growth opportunity. We don't want to look at it negatively. In coaching, we use a lot of positive language, and so we look at it as a growth opportunity, how you learn and how you evolve at every failure. You're going to have failures and obstacles throughout your journey, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's a career, whether it's your professional journey, you are going to. And how do you navigate that,
I remember one of my first investors, Ed Jackson, and I mentioned this many times, asking me this simple question: what is it that you want? And I think he asked me that question about some 35, 40 times. I threw up my hands in horror and said, look, I've answered it. No, you haven't. And so I think it goes on. And I think he always used to tell me of the story of David being carved out beautifully.
Yes.
And one guy goes up and tells the sculptor, well, how did you manage to just do this beautifully? And the guy responds and says, oh, you were just sitting in. All I had to do was to chip away the extra things, and we got this beautiful
Yes.
sculpture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But then, like what Gautami said is, the sun rises and the sun sets. And I remember when Hillary Clinton lost, Barack Obama said this: well, people win elections and people lose elections, but let me tell you, there's one thing that's for sure: the sun will rise again in the morning and it'll set again tomorrow. So we all go on our journeys.
Yeah.
So learning failures is a step towards learning. But you have been in the film industry, you have been in the TV host, you've done so many things, and you started off so young at the age of 16, I believe, yeah. But I'm sure you would have had coaches, people who teach you on the job, people who guide you, because coaching people see in different ways. Because I've seen people give you business coaching, I've also seen people give you life coaching. So, in the journey of aspiration, you're right, people lose this balance, work life balance, they lose the big picture of life. So, how do you see a guide, a mentor, a coach can help you get on this journey? Just chip away the unnecessary things that go to me.
I would have greatly appreciated having a coach. Knowing what I know now of myself and looking back on the journey that I have traversed to get to this point, I have to say it with pride because it's a good way to own it, but I am definitely self made in the person that I am. Because, and I say that because it's not that I walked alone. I've had some wonderful people who walked with me, different stages of my life. Some have kind of stuck it out, some have come and gone. But at the end of the day, whatever I took from each phase of my life, learned from it, understood it, however hard the knocks were, as you said, failure teaches you a lesson. It's a fantastic growth opportunity. So the first time I started getting knocks like this, personal knocks, actually now I feel proud of myself for looking at it that way. I remember that what came up inside of me was, yes, this is a hard knock. Okay, you're getting a hard knock in life, but so what? That's not the point. The point is, what do you get out of this? it's costing you so much in terms of, pain and life and energy and so much of this. What are you going to get out of it? So I set out to see what is the best lesson I can learn from that. Why did that happen? What are my actions that caused that event to happen? What is that experience traversing that challenge, taught me? What are the skills of mine that have come to the fore? What are my weaknesses that I noticed at the time? So then how do I build from there to the next level? So this kind of, once I defined this consciously for myself at one stage, it started becoming a way of looking at things. The first time I started doing this was actually when I was diagnosed with cancer at a pretty early age. And I remember coming out of this, I never, beat my breast and say, God, why me? I never did that. But I did say, why me? As in, why? What happened? What did I do? Or what happened around me, So that way of looking at it as a learning opportunity and the determination to say, I'm going through a very difficult time and I must come out with something. And that something has to be a learning experience that makes me stronger, more resourceful, more multifaceted.
The workshop that you facilitated today at the University of Cyberjaya, it was interesting when you asked most of the participants, what do you want? They all said, well, I want to be a celebrity. I want to be a great success. And I remembered one Vanita Imran saying, well, that's nothing wrong with it. Of course, you all want to aspire. But I just want to go back a little bit because I had a sales coach and he got me a book by John Fenton. And John Fenton always used to say, if you want to be successful, you must have knowledge of the customer and knowledge of the product and then knowledge of yourself. Because if you don't understand these three things, you're not going to sell. But then, you acted with some of the most successful actors in the definition of a box office hit. Mega stars. And in Singapore Airlines, when I did some work with them, they used to see the prima donnas, yeah. And of course, what's wrong? They are the prima donna, and you need confidence to deal with them. But wasn't intimidation present in you when you start working with these people?
I said this to the workshop, participants, students. Yesterday, I told them, I said, the one thing that you have to know, I'm sharing from my own experience with you, is that I have till now never been intimidated by anybody I've met. There have been people that I've respected, people that have earned my respect, people
Can I
that I've looked
interrupt?
up to. Yeah.
Why were you not intimidated? Because it's a normal psychological reaction. Why were you not intimidated? Was it because you were so confident of your skills or your trade or yourself?
Confidence was never a question for me. A
Okay.
question of confidence or lack of confidence never came up in my mind. Till today, it does not exist in my dictionary at all.
Okay.
I know a lot of people have trouble understanding that. I've had people tell me, I hate you for the way you are. But the fact is, it's not an issue. It becomes an issue when you start thinking about it. It's like you bruise your finger, pinch it in a doorway, and then you go on worrying at it. That's when it becomes, you leave it, it goes away, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
So I think too much of stress is placed on confidence or the lack of it today. And I think that's what has really created a personal crisis. Because I see so many people, young and old, with great talent, great capacity, so much of potential. And all of that is literally never going to shine out simply because of a notion in their minds that somehow they're not enough.
Sure. Thank you, Gautami. Karen, I think Gautami said personal crisis. So when you have a coachee with a personal crisis and their goals and objectives, because in the world of business, you talk about, hey, look, key performance indicators, goals, objectives. And in corporate life, you don't really look at people's personal crisis. Nice to talk about it, but your finance head is going to ask you, look, the goal was not achieved, the objective was not achieved. So how do you as a coach deal with this personal crisis?
Okay. It's interesting because I just want to share a story that I experienced And this was what we call a coaching moment. It wasn't even a structured coaching session. It was at a random corridor that I met this person, And when I saw her, she looked very distressed. And I said, "Hi, how are you? You don't look yourself. Is there anything I can do to help you?" And she was very hesitant. I said, "Is something bothering you that I can help you?" And then very hesitantly, she told me that she's going through this multi types of time management crisis.
Right, tasking.
Yeah, so she's multitasking and she couldn't cope. So I said, "Do you want to talk about it?" And so she willingly told me about it. And she said, right now, she says her mom she's the only child and she lives with the mother. And she has to take care of the mother because the mother is ill. And she has to cook for the mother before she comes to work, make sure that everything is taken care of. And she's on the phone in case, the mother needs anything urgent. In the meantime, she's in the office, trying to meet all the deadlines and whatever stuff the boss has given her. So she is in a dilemma, personal crisis, so to speak. And of course, resources is always an issue. There's never enough resources, time and money and whatever. And so I told her, I asked her actually, so have you done anything about it? And she said, "No, I'm just struggling, I'm cooking." So I said, "Is there anything you can do about it?" And she thought for a while. She said, "Maybe I can do this and can do that." So I gave her some time and she actually came up with 2 solutions, on her own through my questions that I asked her to help her to find. It's actually all about self-discovery.
Sure.
As a coach, we don't provide guidance. We don't give them advice. We don't.
So it's a Carl Rogerian active listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So she came up with a couple of solutions. I said, "That's fine. That's great. So do you think it's actionable? Can this be done?" She said, "I think so." I said, "On a scale of 1 to 10, how actionable you think this, and what obstacles do you think you will face?" So she came up with all the obstacles. So how do you intend to mitigate all of that? And she came up with everything. So I think that session was a breakthrough session for her. She had a personal crisis. She had no one to talk to.
Yeah.
And it so happened that I bumped into her in the corridor and we had this conversation. Coaching is basically a deep conversation that we have. And she found the solutions by herself.
Yeah.
And I was so happy for her. And I kept in touch with her and it worked for her.
So coaching moment, yeah.
Yes, it's a coaching
I'm
moment.
sure that we have all had these coaching moments.
Absolutely, yes.
As we just get to the close of the podcast, just about a minute, I remember this book, Aspiration by Agnes Callard, and it talks about the agency of becoming. And that's the problem. But gurus have always talked to, very eminent professors have always talked to us about the being is lost in the becoming. When is enough enough? How do we get to contentment? So maybe I just want a quick response, maybe one quick idea before we run out of time from Gautami, and then we'll go on to Karen.
I completely agree with that because I've seen so much of, the being get lost in the becoming. I think the thing here is to keep an eye on the fact that the goal is never bigger than the aspirer.
Beautiful. Then the person, yeah.
Whoever's dreaming of that is always bigger than the goal.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think for me, I think every human being never finds contentment. We're never content, I think so, because we're always aspiring for more. I want more, and I want more. So I think in order to overcome that, or we reframe it and say that, and what you said is right, look at it as a journey. Don't look at it as an outcome, because outcomes are binary, it's either yes or no, But if you look at it as a journey, how you grow, how you learn, and how you evolve, I think that will help to to get contentment to a certain extent.
As as a friend of mine once told me, he said, you evolve on the journey, and you just need to know when is enough because we had a podcast, one of the episodes, we had a politician here, and I said, should politicians ever retirement age? And well, the answer was that most people don't want to, because by the time they get to 10, 15 years, that's when the time they feel they're competent. But then their time is up. So there's always, when you talk about term limits, you get into that problem. But I think if you talk about it as a journey, and you talk about it evolving, and I think if you go back and say, hey, look, nothing is bigger than the self, I think that brings us to our own reality. You don't lose the being in the process of becoming. Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure having you here, and I hope our viewers found some benefit. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thank you,
having
Tan
me
Sri.
here.
Yeah, thank you.